Good morning, everyone. And for those who are watching from different time zones, it could be good afternoon, especially New Zealand area, I guess. And good evening for some still, I guess, for especially those who's going to watch this on a replay. So my name is Marilyn. I'm the founder and CEO of Customized Training Solutions, or CTS Private Limited. And we are passionate about helping leaders and organizations who are continuous learners and action takers to transform and thrive in all 5 Ps by co creating customized programs with our world class resources. We have served over 3,000 leaders from over 30 countries in different industries, including Petronas, Sony, ProLife UK, Ayala Group, Chevron, Tencent, Jollibee Foods Corporation, and Shell, to name a few. Experts says that the pandemic will last for the next 4 to 5 years. This is why we are organizing several interventions, including this interview, to help leaders who don't know how to stay relevant and adapt in the new normal, those who find it stressful to lead and ensure performance of a remote team, and of course, for those who's running a business and afraid that they can't keep their team or their business. So to be able to stay relevant and continue to lead effectively in any situation, please do join us in our interventions like this interview. And we also have master classes and masterminds that we organize on a regular basis. Um, and today, it's my great pleasure to introduce our leader. We've actually worked together in our previous summit, and I'm so impressed with him. So I have to invite him again today. So to introduce to you, before I bring him in, Dinesh have 20 years of communications, marketing, branding expertise developed in marine energy, consumer electronics, telecommunication, and media industry. His experience and expertise includes marketing, communications, mergers, crisis, change employee, uh, and both employee and internal communications projects development and management on a global, regional, or local levels. And he's also a spokesperson management when it comes to media training, speech writing, media relations, management, as well as a bit of sales as well, and events and sponsorship. So without so much further ado, I'd like to bring in Dinesh. Yes. Hi,
Hello, good
Dinesh.
morning,
Good
Marilyn.
morning.
Hello,
Nice
good
to see you
morning.
again.
Good to see you, and thank you very much for that introduction.
You're most welcome. And so, I have 8 questions for you. So I'd like to jump in right away. But just to brief
Let's do it.
everyone who's watching us and you as well. So my first 3 questions is mainly for us to have a better understanding of where you're coming from which perspective are you actually coming from, right? And then the 4 to 6 questions would likely be, I would say, the meaty part where we will be learning a lot from you, and the 7 to 8 question will be my Miss Universe questions. So yeah, let's jump in. So my first question is it's not necessarily much of a question, but we just want you to share with us like your leadership experiences, probably your influencers, or maybe you have a favorite style. So, or who like influence you in your leadership style now. So please feel free to share that with us.
Yes, I'm grateful for the fact that my leadership experience was molded at the very beginning of my working career. So
Mm-hmm.
I had two really awesome mentors at Sony Pictures,
Mm-hmm.
Gregory Ho and Ricky Au, and they are now at Turner. They've been working with each other for over 30 years now. And I
Wow.
had the great honor of working under them and joining Sony Pictures Television on the same day as them. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, I was at I was at the bottom of the rung, and they were quite high. But they worked hard, and they expected the same of their charges.
Mm-hmm.
There was no shirking. I thrived under them and met their expectations, and they had some really hard expectations. I'll give you an example. When we traveled to other countries for meetings or for business trips,
Mm-hmm.
their expectation was anywhere from 6 to 7. meetings in a day that would bring
Wow.
results. So breakfast meeting, then two meetings in the morning before lunch, and then after that another two meetings in the evening, in the afternoon, and then dinner meeting. And all of this just gave me that, showed me their perspective, their values when it came to hard work, but also what they valued, in people, and that helped me grow closer to them. And then when I
Mhm,
moved on to Nokia, I had those kinds of managers as well. And then also currently with my manager at Vatsala. So I'm grateful that the leadership influences that I've had have all been people who are not afraid to roll up their sleeves and do what's
mhm,
required, but they also know how to delegate and let their charges take ownership and also succeed or fail.
mhm. Thank you for sharing with us. And I'm glad. I mean, a lot of us would actually definitely learn from, our experiences as well. And I'm glad you've also made mention how, hard work and dedication is life is important, which you've also learned from, your previous leaders or managers within the organization. Before
Yes.
I ask my next question, I just like to say hi to Akshat from he's actually saying hello to us and watching us currently. Hello to you. That's from LinkedIn. And so that leads me to the next question because, you've made mention about hard work as well as, dedication in the in to the job, which you've learned from your previous leaders. So i- what is leadership for you then?
It's a it's a very broad question, but I think it is giving people a leg up. It is giving them opportunities. It's giving people the opportunity to try new things,
Mhm,
and it is also working with the team,
mhm,
working with people to take
mhm,
risks and to try
mhm,
those new things. So
mhm,
it's about enabling people
mhm,
and
mhm,
helping them determine their careers. I mean, as
mhm,
leaders, we can help to guide our people, but
mhm,
it's also giving them or showing them that their paths, towards success, or their career paths are theirs to determine. So it's all about enabling. It's all about telling them that it's okay to try, to take risks, and it's
mhm,
okay to fail. And of course, we celebrate the successes together. We also celebrate the failures together. But it's all about experimenting, and that's something that we thrive on, at least in my current role with my team. And when we look back at and smile very very fondly at many of the successes, it's those successes are based on experimentation, on trying new things that other people haven't tried before, or that teams haven't tried before. And also, I think it's not just one thing.
mhm,
Different, and leadership means different things to
mhm.
different people. But for me, at least, a big thing is about opportunities and experimentation, and giving
Right.
people a leg up.
Right, right. I really love what you said about leadership to, as being an enabler for
It
people,
is
right? Being able to encourage them or like what you've said, leg up in terms of giving them opportunities, and also like learn new things. And that's when we encourage actually, them to participate, them to, to contribute, and at the same time for them to also step up from their current
correct.
level, right? Because you
Yes,
enable them, you empower them to, to be a better person or to be what they ought to be. I would say as a leader. I'm actually getting questions here from Akshat who's engaging with us, and he's asking like the qualities of a leader and why are leaders so much criticized. That's really a good questions that you're raising, Akshat. But we will be actually addressing a few of them, I guess, Dinesh,
yes,
right?
we will
Yeah. So
definitely.
but definitely the qualities of leader, we will have that question. But I'd like to probably address this question on why are leaders so much criticized, because we've said that leaders leadership is about enabling people, and why are leaders so much criticized? I'm
Yes,
not sure if you'd like to answer that now.
I
they,
can.
they
I
face,
and I
yeah, they face so much resistance. So this is the question. Let me flash that. Akshat here is like really giving us a lot of questions, important questions when it comes to leadership. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and thank you, Akshat. And so, would you like me to answer those questions now,
Yes, please.
Marilyn?
I think the later on you will be able to answer, like, cuz I have part of this question is the qualities of or capabilities of leader. But I guess what you can answer now is more on why are leaders so much criticized and why leaders face so much resistance. I guess that's quite interrelated, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, and speaking from experience, because having
Mm-hmm.
climbed this proverbial ladder myself,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen both sides of the issues, and having been subjected to them, and also having subjected my subordinates to them as well, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, leaders aren't perfect; they are humans as well, so they have gone through
Exactly.
their own sets of challenges. But
Mm-hmm.
there are some issues that leaders still face, when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to managing their subordinates or their teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just list three of them. Micromanaging is one. It's the
Yes.
desire to control or know everything that's going on within the team.
Mhm,
The second one is fear that a
mhm,
subordinate is smarter than them and going
mhm,
to outshine them.
mhm,
As humans, we have that fear, because when we look around us, we
mhm,
feel like we need to know everything, and so that's why the micromanaging and the fear
mhm,
comes in and all as well.
mhm, mhm,
And then the third one, I think, is also imposter syndrome.
mhm,
This again, this lack of self-belief, in what we know, in our capabilities. So when we have those fears, we end up subjecting our subordinates or our employees to some very unfair
mhm,
requirements, or unfair rules, and unfair expectations.
mhm,
So I think I myself fall into a very large pool of managers who go
mhm,
through these challenges. So I think if we say why are leaders criticized or unliked, I hope leaders aren't criticized unfairly for being
mhm,
leaders.
mhm,
They have the opportunity to step up, and I think individuals, as they're climbing that proverbial ladder, want to become leaders
mhm,
as well. But
mhm,
I feel that it's a learning journey, and there must be open conversations many times as well. I've seen it, I've seen this, and I've heard this as well. But
mhm,
when subordinates or employees have problems with their managers, they
mhm,
wait till the very last minute, or they don't address at all, the
mhm,
issues with their managers. And sometimes they circumvent and go to someone else and
mhm,
this and complain about the issue. But this issue or rather this concerns should be
mhm,
addressed. I mean, they may be uncomfortable, but they
mhm,
should be taken up, not just with leaders or with managers, but also
mhm,
other individuals. So there are so many ways to tackle this, about criticizing leaders being criticized, and I
mhm.
think if communications can be kept open, and if
Yes.
leaders can also then express their vulnerability, that
Mhm,
the fact that they are humans themselves, and they are going
mhm.
through a lot of these issues themselves,
Right.
then I think people will understand them better, and will understand that they too are making these mistakes. They too have made these mistakes before. They too are learning, and they are on a
Right.
learning journey still, that the learning doesn't stop.
Exactly, exactly. So, and I actually remembered, in our previous summit that we've organized, where you've also participated. The third day is actually all about communications, and
Correct.
again, a lot of these things, the problems that arises in the organization or between people, between leaders and their team, is a lot to do with how they communicate, and especially here in Asia, where people are quite hesitant to to express themselves. But if there's like psychological safety or if you create that brave spaces within your organization, then that also helps in terms of how actually people can express themselves or give that feedback. And again, feedback is really important in terms of how you feel. Like you've made mention earlier, like some leaders are not able to express themselves in terms of okay, there's a problem here, but they don't address right, because they're
Correct.
so afraid to give a feedback, or to they just don't know how to communicate it properly. So again, leaders are being criticized in many ways, but mainly because of the problems that arise. And you've made mention about micromanaging, and because of the fear as well, which actually we will probably tackle more in the next questions in terms of the problems, right? For leadership, or top problems of leaders, right?
Yeah.
So, going back to the questions, I mean, you've made mention about, we've already discussed about the your experience, the meaning of leadership. But nowadays, we've, like in my introduction, I made mention about the pandemic, and I believe it's here to stay for a few more years, unfortunately. So a lot of people have been, like, defining or calling this in different names. And one of them is saying like new normal or next normal, whatever they want to call it. So in from your perspective, how would you define or describe the next normal?
If we approach this from the angle of leadership and
Mm-hmm,
teams,
mm-hmm,
since we are talking about leadership and all that, the
mm-hmm,
next normal will
mm-hmm.
have to be about trust and compassion.
Right.
So, firstly, the current situation has forced trust
Mm-hmm,
upon many managers, especially
mm-hmm,
those that um, believe that they have to physically see their employees or subordinates to know that they are working. It's quite an
agree.
Asian practice,
True.
and I think in other regions as well, it exists. And that formula or mindset must change because we are being forced to work from home, and we have seen, several reports in the newspapers here in Singapore
Mm-hmm,
that companies have been fined, for forcing their employees to work in the office when
mm-hmm.
the government has recommended that they work from home. So I think
Exact.
that's one thing,
Mm-hmm,
trust. And secondly, well-being and mindfulness
mm-hmm,
has come to the forefront. And we see that even global figures and celebrities
mm-hmm,
are not immune to measures of or to issues of
mm-hmm,
mental wellness. So
mm-hmm.
this issue is real and it can afflict anyone and everyone. So trust and compassion, or understanding of wellness and mindfulness. So if I was asked what managers should receive their next training, or what their next training should be on, I
Mm-hmm.
would say that it should be around recognizing and
Mm-hmm.
practicing
Mm-hmm.
these soft but critical issues, such
Mm-hmm.
as trusting their teams and recognizing mental wellness concerns and
Mm-hmm.
having compassion for colleagues and teammates who may suffer from these concerns.
Thank you for sharing that. And in the start of the, I mean, we had our conversation in the past where I was doing research about leadership and transformation as well, if you remember that. And
Yes,
during that period, I've actually received a lot of comments with regards to this trust issue, because like what you've said, especially in Asia, where like a lot of leaders are so used to, seeing you physically, and that equates to productivity, right? And or
correct.
performance. And now like a lot of them like struggle in terms of like, oh, so how can we actually trust that our team member are doing what they are supposed to do, knowing that we can't see them, right? So and that's important. And you've also raised this important aspect of, because I just actually seen a post earlier which I've commented from Harvey Ong, and then he was sharing with us about the balance, and how success should be, right? Because sometimes sorry, I've been pressing something here. Sometimes we've been like just looking into the salary or the job title and all those stuff, where in fact, to have that success, we have to have that balance. And that's where the well-being comes in, the compassion as well, which you made mention in terms of what should next normal should look like, or what do we have to consider more in this next normal as a leader, right? So yeah,
Correct.
thank you for sharing that with us. And so that leads us to, you've made mention a bit of this earlier, in terms of, like, from I mean, you're a corporate leader as well, and you've been working with corporate leaders in the past. What would you say would be the top three problems that they normally face? I believe you made mention at least two already,
Yeah.
to
No, I
answer.
mentioned those three. So
Oh, you
micromanaging,
okay.
and then the fear, and then imposter syndrome.
Oh,
So
okay.
those I would say are the top three. For me as well, having gone through that journey as well. So again, coming back to training and having sat through many training courses myself, you
Uh-huh.
know, in terms of leadership growth, right? So
Uh-huh.
when we join large corporates, they
Mm-hmm.
have courses for leaders who are growing team. One is managing self, and then managing teams, and then managing larger teams. So
Right.
I talked about these training courses, and a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
times that the training courses are built on strategy, built on
Mm-hmm.
teamwork and whatnot, but I think a lot of it aren't touching on these softer issues. And I
True.
think, to address these kinds of issues, right,
Mm-hmm.
these training courses for up and coming managers could focus on these concerns. I can't say that
Mm-hmm.
that there are no courses addressing these issues. There are, but I will say that there isn't enough, and there isn't enough focus or
Mm-hmm.
depth, in these courses. And these sorts of programs could be better highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, the other challenge is whether companies will actually take up these kinds of courses for their managers, because they might feel that these kinds of trainings or these kinds of learnings come
Mm-hmm.
on the job and from leadership practice, right? So compassion, trust, micromanaging,
Mm-hmm.
fear, and this lack of confidence,
Mm-hmm.
imposter syndrome. I think all of these things are so
Mm-hmm.
prevalent, but and are they adequately addressed in
Mm-hmm.
the corporate setting? No matter how large or how small the corporate, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. You
And I really like when you said it, that you said that, a lot of companies or organization are lacking in terms of having this soft skills part of the program. In fact, we've been really encouraging a lot of our clients to look into this. The challenge, I guess, for them, especially, to get approval, I guess, from their leaders, or to get the yes of their leaders, is because they have it's quite difficult for soft skills. It's of course quite difficult to um, share in terms of the ROI and all those stuff, like in
correct.
terms of the language of the stakeholders, right? So
Hmm.
that's, I think, the gap where the trainers, or the L&D team has to really improve on, in terms of knowing how they should communicate it with the stakeholders in terms of the return of investment. But again, I mean, as leaders, especially compassionate leaders, and great leaders that are in existence, they should really well understand how important these investments are. And a lot of times, I mean, we all know that learning would always have a direct impact as well in the revenue, because it increases performance, productivity, and profitability, as well as the end result of having that uh, right behavior. And in fact, in our previous masterclass, about 3 weeks ago, we've actually talked about leadership mindset, where
Yeah,
what you've raised in terms of micromanaging and fear, and the need to control, or the imposter syndrome, is actually just all about the mindset, right?
it is. But it's very powerful. It takes over, and people have difficulty breaking out of these funks,
Mm-hmm.
and they're controlling. And when you're not able to break away from it and to
Hmm.
recognize it, firstly, you need to
Right.
recognize it. If you're not able
Exactly.
to recognize it, you
Mm-hmm.
can't break away from it.
True.
And exactly like what you said, right? A lot of the leadership training has ROI. So if you're going to learn strategy, then you're expected to implement either that design
Mhm.
thinking that you learned or the
Mhm.
strategy that
Mhm.
you learned.
Mhm.
But how much does a course or a
Mhm.
training program on mental wellness or mindfulness or
Mhm.
compassion,
Mhm.
how much ROI does it actually have, right? How
Exactly.
can you measure the results?
Mhm. Yeah, true, true. And so that leads me to my next question. What do you believe are the important leadership capabilities or skills you must have in the next normal to continuously lead effectively, right?
Yeah. So other than the earlier points that I'd mentioned
Mhm. Mhm.
on recognizing
Mhm.
wellness, mental wellness, and compassion and all, I also think one must recognize one's team,
Mhm.
and understanding the individual's skills, their
Mhm.
interests, give them room to maneuver and grow,
Mhm.
and give them room to experiment and take charge. And at the same time, one must also recognize that different people are afflicted by different issues and
Mhm.
concerns. So it's not
Mhm.
just about the pandemic, but
Mhm.
always, right? And
Mhm.
they must be willing to address them openly. Again, I mentioned that earlier on about
Mhm.
communication without feeling like it's the job of HR to take care of these sorts of things.
True.
And this is actually something that a colleague of mine told me once. When another colleague in another country
Mhm.
came to me with these issues that he or she was feeling, and another colleague said, "Isn't this the job of
Mhm.
HR to take care of these sorts of things?" And I felt that that was quite an eye opener for me. When when you are recognized as a leader by someone else, and
Mhm.
you are
Mhm.
recognized as a compassionate leader, and someone else
Mhm.
says this is not your job. It's not your job to help the other person in his or her wellness.
Mhm.
So there are, that mindset is very real. And so
Mhm.
I feel that these kinds of capabilities and skills, they may, I mean, of course many people have them, but if other people say that this is not the way to go, this is not
Mhm.
your job, then I think
Mhm.
it's a huge fallacy, and it's a huge problem if it
Exactly.
exists in organizations.
Yes, yes, true. I totally agree with you on that. And especially that, we have to be accountable for our own well being, for, having that or setting those boundaries, like what you've mentioned in even in our previous conversation, and also having awareness of these and taking, the accountability as a leader to your team as well. Because I've always hear this problem. In fact, like, when I get to speak with HR leaders from around the globe, they would always raise this problem where, we really hope that, the people, especially leaders in our organizations, are, get to learn how to be accountable of their team. A lot of times they point fingers to the HR, or this is HR job, like
Correct.
what you said just now. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, it's everyone's responsibility, and as a leader you have to also take charge of your team, and, not really like depending so much on HR in terms of, the well-being and the learning of your team, right, and other stuff that, relates to people. Because as a leader you have to know how to take care of your people, right, how you can enable them as well.
Correct. Yeah, but
Yes.
Marilyn, if I may say, I'd like to interrupt you one second. I really like what you said at the start. You mentioned a very important point. Take care
Yes.
of yourself as well. And I think that's a very important aspect of leadership. A lot of leaders don't recognize that, and if they are not setting good examples, you
Mhm.
know, you know, of themselves, then how are
Mhm.
you going to be able to take care of others? Um,
Correct.
Leaders themselves are going through this issue right now, of having that expectations from their own managers,
Mhm.
but and also of working from home, the stresses that come from working from home. And if
True.
they themselves are not able to call out their own concerns, their mental wellness, that
Mhm.
they are feeling stressed, that they are feeling cocooned, how are they
Mhm.
going to be able to recognize their teammates, right, their employees or their subordinates concerns? So I really like what you said, and I like to give kudos to that. We ourselves have to, as leaders, have to recognize that, and have to put our hands up and say, I need help. That vulnerability, we cannot as leaders say, oh, I have to stay strong, I have to, I have to
Yeah.
show that front. No, I think
Gone are
our
the days when
I,
they do that, when leaders do
correct.
that, right?
Yes, I think that vulnerability is important
Mhm,
because that's what
mhm,
that's real, and that's what
mhm,
people want to see and recognize. And it's no longer a shame show anymore. But
true.
I think we've seen, that people are standing up for that
Mhm,
kind of vulnerability. In the past,
mhm,
your
mhm.
celebrities and your stars and all, they
Yes.
they they didn't show that kind. But for some who didn't show it, it took a very bad toll on their lives.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm.
but then for
True.
those who are choosing to address it, they're standing up to it, facing it, and saying, "I make no, I'm not sorry, but not sorry." You know,
Yes, true, true. At the end of the day, we're all humans, and we can't really like
yes,
know everything. Even if we are leaders, right, of huge organizations, right? So we
correct.
also need help, like what you mentioned earlier. So, what do you believe is the role of learning, leadership, and transformation in order to thrive in this next normal?
I like this question very much. I think we as individuals
Mm-hmm,
must take ownership of our own learning path,
mm-hmm,
and we must enable our colleagues and our teams to engage in the learning journeys that are relevant or meaningful to them.
mm-hmm,
Learning is no longer linear
mm-hmm,
and no longer a set formula
mm-hmm.
like in the past. It was about doing your undergraduate, then doing your master's or your MBA, and then and then following that company assigned training course from course providers.
True.
Um, you know, but of course, the company assigned trading courses, they're very relevant, and they
Mhm,
hit a large number of people.
mhm,
But there is also a lot of knowledge out there. There's a
mhm,
wealth of knowledge out there.
mhm, mhm.
Self education is the new norm. And there
True.
are so many new routes of learning, not just for corporates and not just for corporate employees, but also for the younger group of people. I mean, and I look at my kids and I look at my older son who's 15. I can see how much he's learning on the internet. And even my colleagues as well. My one of my teammates, he makes amazing videos. He's super skilled with the Adobe Creative Cloud and all.
Mhm.
Where did he learn all this? On the internet. The moment when he expressed some interest to create graphic videos or to do more with images and all, he you know he bought the package. I mean, of course, we got him the package, the Adobe Creative package, but all of
Mhm,
his learning, oh
mhm,
yeah, all of his learning was actually online. Looking at training videos on YouTube, how to manipulate those, or how to use those that software. So
mhm,
self-education is definitely the new norm. You don't need to go for a company-assigned course, to learn every single thing. There are so many new routes of learning, and
mhm,
it's about pursuing your interests, and for leaders it's about supporting those pursuits.
mhm,
So that colleague that I mentioned in my team,
mhm,
yes, he is, he has very effectively and successfully, put his feet on the forked road. On the one hand, he's actually doing his MBA right now,
mhm.
but on the
Wow.
other hand, he's actually doing a lot of self-learning and
Mhm.
learning new skills on creative.
True. And that's when I mean I agree with you with when it comes to, ownership of your own learning, where, a lot of the HR leaders are struggling with, because they said, how can we actually do that? How can we encourage that accountability or ownership to everyone when it comes to their own learning, right? And I love that you've shared with us how important it is, especially in the next normal, because nowadays, I mean, learning will be an essential for anyone who would like to continuously grow and be able to adapt in what next normal or new normal is, right? And it's
Correct.
all about continuous learning, because the only thing here is, or constant here is, change. So for us to be able to adapt to those changes that are happening around us, um, we have to be more accountable with our own learning, to be able to adapt, to be able to be future ready, as I would sometimes say that, right? and
Yes.
and
Very true.
I love what you've shared in terms of how especially younger generations, I would say, like how they learn now, as in like, okay, oh, how did you learn that? I also asked my daughter, who's also 15 years old now. Sometimes she would do something, how did you learn that? And then YouTube, or like, other social media or online. I mean, so even
Correct.
sometimes when she asks me, oh, why don't you Google, or why don't you search? That's what I would normally tell her.
Yes. And so many people have so much of experience in so many different things. It's, I mean, we're
Exactly.
not just talking about the corporate route right now, but we're talking about
Mhm.
anything. There
Right.
are courses out there on everything, like how people have
Mhm.
overcome, say, eczema, or people have
Mhm.
overcome, a bad divorce and all, and people have made courses out of this, and people want to learn.
Right.
When we reflect on that movie, Catch Me If You Can, the one with
Mhm.
Leonardo DiCaprio, and then when he was caught, and people asked him, how is it that he was able to, be a lecturer and teach, in the university. If I'm remembering my story correctly, he said all you
Uh-huh.
have to do is just be one chapter ahead,
Uh-huh.
right? As long as you are one chapter ahead of someone, you are able to
Mhm.
then teach. So many people have these experiences, and there are people who want to learn from them. So
Mhm.
self education is definitely the new norm. And that's why a lot
Yes.
of people are learning to not just grow, but to overcome concerns as well.
And we're really lucky that there's a lot of resources and content everywhere nowadays. So it
Correct.
it's just
And
about,
platforms.
yeah, and platforms, correct. I mean, like in LinkedIn alone, it's really an amazing platform where you can learn a lot of things, where people really share content. I mean, so it's just up to us to be able to, equip ourselves, or take that ownership, like what you've said, mentioned earlier, in terms of our own learning path, right? So
Correct.
um let's go then to the next question. This is a very interesting one. If you have a magic wand and can use it, what will you do?
The magic wand. All
Yes.
right. I would make myself invisible, and I would
Okay.
teleport to any location. I'd love to be a fly on the wall, where I want to be and when I want to be. Um, I'd love to see how successful people do what they do
Uh-huh.
and how they do them.
Mm-hmm.
Not just in business, of course, but also in different things like contributing to society,
Uh-huh.
family, wealth management,
Mm-hmm.
and how the very successful in their fields are able to make the most out of their 24 hours, while the rest of us lament that there's not enough time in one day to do
Mm-hmm.
everything that we need to do. Right. So I'd love to do that. If I had a magic wand, or two wishes or one wish, yeah, I'd make myself invisible and teleport to any location.
Wow, superpowers. You really wanted that superpowers. And yeah,
Very
I
much
think
so.
sometimes we just wanted to have that, like, just, for, especially for our family perhaps, or for our loved ones to be there just like that, especially now that we can't travel as much as we used to, right? To be able
Correct.
to teleport and just, hug them and be with them, right?
Oh,
Especially
but
for
then for me, it'd be invisible, so I won't show myself.
invisible. Ah, okay, I see. That's very interesting power that
Yeah.
you chose, be invisible. So, but I mean, with all your knowledge and your leadership, you can't be invisible. Yeah. So anyway, that moves me to the last question, which is, if you were to ask yourself a question that you can best answer, what would it be?
Hmm. I like this question as well. Uh, I feel that it forces us to change our story.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I say that?
Mm-hmm.
Because often, and again, I speak from experience,
Mm-hmm.
when we subject ourselves to negative stories, we play
Exactly.
those stories again and again and again in
Mm-hmm.
our minds
Mm-hmm.
about how we um, didn't make the best use of
Mhm.
situations like education
Right.
or
Mhm.
our time in this job or that
Mhm.
job, and how
Mhm.
we screwed up at some place or another.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if we keep reinforcing that, we will not progress.
Mhm. True.
But I'm really grateful that some time ago, my young son, I mean, who's now
Mhm.
10 years old, so imagine he asked me this a couple of years ago when,
Mhm.
and it was very mature for his age. He asked me, "What are you really proud of?"
Mhm.
And that forced me to change my narrative and my story.
Mhm.
And now
Mhm.
I can focus on areas of strength, like
Mhm.
my tenacity at work, my
Mhm.
desire to learn new things,
Mhm.
making thoughtful investments to
Mhm.
prepare for retirement, taking care of
Mhm.
my family's
Mhm.
insurance coverage, for example, all very important things, right? And
Mhm.
giving
Mhm.
my best for my family. I'm not perfect; it's riddled with mistakes, but I'm doing my best. And then also, taking care of my parents who are getting on in
Mhm.
age. So that would be the question. What are you really proud of? And I
Mhm.
think we need to, nowadays, especially with everything that's going on, we need to give
Mhm.
ourselves that strength. and
Right.
and we know the best answer. And if we take a piece of paper, and we
Mhm.
write it down, what are you really proud of? What are your
Mhm.
strengths?
Mhm.
And I think if we don't focus on, and focusing on not what we do not want, but focusing on
Mhm.
what we really want,
True.
right? I think we will be able to come up with those, and tie our hands to our back and say, no, we are not supposed to think about what we don't want, but not supposed
Mhm.
to think of our failures or whatever, but change
Mhm.
the story,
Mhm.
to what are we really proud of? What are
Mhm.
our strengths, right? And what is it that we do want? And I think if we did that, we will
Mhm.
be we will be all the better, and we will do justice to ourselves and also to our society.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that story. And it's amazing, right, that we can learn from our children.
Correct.
Right? So and also, like, we've run several webinars in the past where, they've raised a lot of these things, because it's again all about the mindset. In our recent program, where, Chris made mention of this, small voice or negative voice within us, that keeps on bugging us. Of course, that's, I mean, natural, right? That, we get to have that. But again, like what you've said, just thinking of, like, what are you really actually proud of, and um taking all this negativity into more positive self-talk, right? And
Correct.
for us to be resilient, it's very important for us to, stay positive, and to be able to, like, think differently, moving those negativity into positivity, or this crisis into opportunities, right? Because we
Yes.
can, in fact, right?
Correct. We can. We
So,
just have to.
mm,
We just have to shift gears, or shift
exactly.
directions, rather, not gears. The directions.
Directions, yes, we can always do that, and as human, we have the power to, right? And that's
Correct.
what makes us amazing as well. And I've actually seen a lot of questions coming from Akshat here. Thank you so much for raising this. Some of your question might be out of topic already, but I really appreciate you, asking and raising all these questions. He's been really engaging with us. When we talk about HR earlier, he asked about, is it HR or a psychiatrist, or how leaders do tough with we deal with tough people. Maybe this one we can, get to answer before we end this call. How
So
leaders
what?
deal with
What?
tough people.
I don't think there's any one right answer to that. There's no one set formula for it. Um, I think I guess it's all about the situation. And one thing that I am also trying to inculcate within myself, and
Mhm,
I won't say that I've succeeded
mhm,
by any measure,
mhm,
is the need to understand others
mhm,
before being understood.
mhm,
So I've failed in many negotiations. I've failed
mhm,
in many situations where I've presented a business case and tried to convince other people. But then I try to remember that one thing, that you know understand others first, and understand where they're
mhm,
coming from, their needs and all. When people feel understood, then they
mhm,
will come to understand you.
Mm-hmm.
So seek the need to understand first, and I think that's how we can deal with tough people, and I'm trying to practice that as well. Like I said, I haven't succeeded every single time, and sometimes I forget that rule as well, but when I do remember that rule, then
Mm-hmm.
I remember as well to just keep my mouth shut and listen. And when people feel understood, after a while, eventually they will have nothing more to say. But if we just go in like a battering ram,
Mm-hmm.
then we're just going to be at loggerheads.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for so much for sharing that. And it's all about, people, understanding people first and then being able to communicate. Surely you've actually shared with us how to be both a compassionate leader and how amazing you are when it comes to communication. So we thank you for that, for all your insights, your thoughtful and generous sharing. I love the stories that you've shared with us throughout this interview. And for that, we thank you. And thank you, everyone, especially to Akshat for engaging with us. Is there anything more that you'd like to share before we end this interview?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm really enjoying this series. Thanks, Marilyn.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to have you here in this interview and to learn from you. And I'm sure our audience will really learn so much, especially on the communications and leadership side, because that's where a lot of leaders um, are falling behind, I would say. When it comes to communications, that's one of the toughest part of being a leader, right? So thank you so much
Correct.
for sharing with us a lot of tips, nuggets, and for being so vulnerable as well and sharing your own stories and experiences with us. And again, I'd like to thank everyone who's watching us, and do join us in this journey to fight this pandemic, to have or turn this into opportunity to for us to be able to create an impact to each other, to others, as and do remember that even the richest investors would say that I mean that's Warren Buffett who said that investing in yourself is the best
Correct.
investment you can ever make in your life. So with that, we also would like to leave you with this quote from Dolly Parton, that if your action creates legacy that inspires others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. Thank you, Dinesh, and thank you,
Beautiful.
everyone. See you again.
Thanks, Marilyn. See you
You're
again.
welcome.
Bye.